Hello and welcome to my demo for rapid deployment of Scaleio nodes on VMware Workstation utilizing the labbuildr toolkit and the VMX toolkit for rapid deployment of virtual demo and test environments. In order to get started, we just need to download the Scaleio full distribution from support.emc.com. There's a Scaleio complete software download. It's 1.6 gigabytes in size. Download this to your local computer, and I've already downloaded it. You will find it in your download section and double click into it. There's a Scaleio UI that's called the GUI. Double click on it, install it. It's a setup next finish. And there's as well in the VMware directory a Scaleio OVM template. The best thing is just move it to your desktop or extract it to your desktop that we can start the import process of it. To import the OVM, I've already copied it to my desktop. Just do a double click on the OVM file. The OVM importer asks you where to import it to, and I have labbuildr installed on my E drive, so I say labbuildr as the source directory, as the target directory for the OVM, and I leave the rest as it is right now. And I say import. It takes about a minute to import the virtual machine template. This is a virtual machine template that was built for Scaleio deployment on ESX hosts, so we have to modify a few things. So what I will do with my script is I will create a base snapshot of this virtual machine. From there we can start linked clones. But not only this, I also will start and add a hard drive to each virtual machine with 100 gig in size. I will change the configuration of the NICs and the configuration of the SCSI adapter to match the configuration of my VMware Workstation. From the setup, normally on VMware Workstation we have a host-only network that has DHCP. This is a network that we want to use for Ethernet 0. Right now everything you see here is mapped to the bridged network. You will see later on when I start my script, the first network will be the host-only network, and the other two networks point to a network that you decide. I recommend VMnet 2 because I'm also using VMnet 2 here for my other virtual machines. They are connected to VMnet number 2, so they can communicate over VMnet number 2. Once downloaded and imported the OVM template, just open your labbuildr environment. Make sure you run a labbuildr -action upgrade to get to the latest version of labbuildr that has my Scaleio script implemented. To start the Scaleio deployment, just type in Scaleio -Scaleio master path. It should find the Scaleio OVM that we just extracted, and for the nodes, we deploy 3 nodes. You can deploy how many nodes you want. You can run with a single node, you can run with 5 nodes, 4 nodes, whatever you want. In this demo, we are configuring 3 nodes. 2 of them will be our primary and secondary MDM, metadata management server, and 1 will be the tiebreaker. So we are going to cluster the whole environment, and 3 nodes also will function as Scaleio data servers, which serve storage to our clients. A client will be one of my Windows machines, so we will install the SDC on the Windows machine and connect to that environment. So we install 3 nodes, and I want to customize my VMnet to use VMnet 2 so that I can communicate with my other virtual machines. To see what's happening here, I use the -verbose, so I do a little bit output of some commands so that you can see what's happening during the install. So he's firing up the first virtual machine, and it takes about, let's say, 10 seconds to fire up all 3 virtual machines, depending on the memory that you have in your machine and the speed of your machine. I recommend to run this all on flash drives. So that's all I recommend for you. Run it on flash drives. Once it's installed, you see here it took from the first to the last machine, it took just 12 seconds because I was running in the verbose mode. Without verbose mode, it will be a little bit faster. All 3 machines are up. So for the first run, he's templating the master VMX so that nobody can delete it. It creates a base snap, and from there we are just creating linked clones. We add the hard drive, we are modifying the NIC 0 to host only, and the NIC 1 and 2 for VMnet number 2. Once this is done, we can also have a look at my VM settings. And you see here it's host only VMnet 2, and a 100 gig drive is added. We just go to each virtual machine and see this has the 192.168.40.128 network IP address assigned to DHCP. The second one is the 129, and the third one is the 130. Rather than working from this console here, I'm using PuTTY to communicate with the virtual machines, because drag and dropping is a little bit easier. I already, because I know what's happening, have those IP addresses in. I connect to it as root. It takes a few seconds because there is no DNS service running currently. So it tries to do a reverse to my host. Stupidness of Linux. And we are admin, and the root and the password is always admin, and then we are connected to this virtual machine. In the virtual machine there is a install directory that contains all the Scaleio software that we need. So in this OVM template everything is in. You don't need to download, you don't need to run the install wizard, everything is in here. So what we do on the first two nodes is we install the RPM for the MDM and the RPM for the SDS, which is here. Just copy and paste the RPM command. It takes a few seconds and then it's installed. From there we jump over to the next virtual machine. Before we do so, we just configure our Ethernet number 2 with the YAST command prompt. So Ethernet number 2 is configured to point to 10.10.0.91. So it's restarting the interface. And now we do a SSH into the secondary machine. It again takes a few seconds. And the password again is admin. Also, here we are going to install the MDM and the SDS. And then we change the IP address. to 92 for the second network. So then we connect to the last node. Confirm. And the password is admin again. So what's different here? Rather than installing the MDM, we are installing the tiebreaker and the SDS software. And then we change the IP address. We're not changing only the the secondary IP address. We are also changing the primary IP address here because I don't want to rely on DHCP. So I'm giving that one an IP address in the same segment as the DHCP server is, but it gets the 9.3 instead of the 130 because everything under 128 is statically assigned. This SSH session will no longer function because it tries to connect. So what I'm doing now is I start a new putty session to my 10.10.0.91, which is my root server. I say save and open and root. You can also configure the networks by using Yast in order to point to the right DNS service and all that stuff. We don't need this for the demo. And now we make sure that we can ping the 192.168.40.93 and it's alive. We do an SSH into 10.10.0.92. Yes. Which is our second node, and this is the secondary network adapter that we are connecting to. And we give a password of admin. And then we change the secondary network address, the primary network address here as well to match to 192. I did this from the secondary one so that I don't cut the line I'm sitting on, and we can exit this node. And what we also have to do is we change the primary IP address on the node I'm currently on. So on my primary node, do the same. And now all network addresses are changed, so I can ping the 192.168.40.92 and it's alive, and I can ping the 9.3 and it's alive, and I can ping obviously myself and I'm alive. So this was the basic network setup. We installed the packages on all nodes, so we are good to go right now. Every software that we need is installed. The first thing during the Scaleio software setup is we need to define the primary metadata manager, which is the node 1 that I'm currently in. We do this with a command called scli, Scaleio CLI, and the command for it is @primarymdm. We have to read the license agreement. I say yes, I read it all, and we are done. So we configured this node as the primary MDM. Once we have done this, we need to log into the primary MDM. The password is admin for the first time. What he tells us right now is that we have to change the password. We do so, and the password is password123. We have to relog in with the new password. We are logged in as administrator. From now on, we can add the secondary MDM and the tiebreaker node to this environment. So we added the secondary MDM, and right now we have to add the tiebreaker as well. Good so far. Before we start and switch to the cluster mode, what we do is we start the Scaleio UI. And we connect to 3 to this node, and we see we are running currently in single node mode. We haven't formed a cluster right now. That's what we are going to do very soon. So in order to form the cluster, I go back into my putty session on the machine, and issue the command switch to cluster. Pretty easy. SCLI switch to cluster mode. You see the cluster, it's degraded, and right now we have a cluster formed just by issuing SCLI switch to cluster mode. That so far is doing the basic setup of the MDM cluster. Right now we have to go forward and configure the SDS, the Scaleio data service on every node. To do this, we have to create a what we call protection domain. We will later on add all SDS nodes that we have with their storage to this protection domain. So we go to the back end. Currently we see there is no protection domain configured. This will change very soon once we launch the commands. So the commands to create the protection domain is scli add protection domain. Oops, sorry, there was a small typo in it. I have the old IP address from my from my earlier setup, and the protection domain is created. And you see the protection domain labbuildr, it's currently empty because I have no SDSs assigned to it. Now I'm going to assign the SDS nodes to this protection domain. So I do it for the first one. Say scli add SDS minus management domain IP, MDM IP address, and it gets connected. And I told him also to use the drive SDB, which is the 100 gig drive that we have. I do the same for node 2 and 3. Just get back to my putty session, which is here. Come on, putty. And you see the other SDS nodes are now part of my protection domain. Okay, good so far. We go back to the dashboard. We see we have no SDC configured. SDC is the client that connects to my SDS. We have a protection domain. We have 3 SDSs with 3 devices. The system is clustered. Currently we have no volumes. So what we need to do now is, I close this first window because this is annoying that we have this still on. What we have to do now is we have to add a volume, and we have to specify again scli minus add volume, and specify the IP address of the management domain of the MDM, and then we have to specify a volume name and the protection domain, and then it gets created. So we created a 56 gigabyte volume in our protection domain. You see it here, it's defined, but it's currently not mapped. So in the next step we will have to map this out to a host. Before we can do this, we have to install the SDC software on the host. Therefore, I go to my previously installed Windows machine, switch it a little bit to full screen mode, and go into a command prompt, especially into a PowerShell command prompt. Then I run. I have the software already extracted. If I go to VMware host, so on the VMware host there's a shared folder sources directory. In the sources directory I already extracted my Scaleio SDC package for Windows, which is called EMC Scaleio SDC. I just run a command against it, and the command is the MSI installer, and to the MSI installer I add the IP addresses of my MDM nodes. Once this is done, we should see a SDC registered to the client. In order to make the client access the volume, you know that all, we need to do something like LUN mapping. There's a command scli map volume to SDC, where we just specify the volume that we want to map and the IP address or the ID of the SDC, and then it's mapped, and you see the volume switches here to map. If we switch back to our Windows host and we do a get disk, which is a standard Windows PowerShell command. We see, okay, we have a new drive. It's called EMC Scaleio. It's offline and it's 56 GB raw in size. We could also use file and storage services, go to disks, and he will query for the disks, and he sees the 56 gig drive, unknown currently, so we have to import that drive. Bus type here is fiber channel for it. Yes, I want to bring it online, and I want to create a new volume. It's going to be initialized as GPT. I say OK here, 56 gigabytes, and it's the drive letter E, and its default allocation size unit. I changed it to 8K for whatever reason, and I make Scaleio test. Next, and he creates the volume, so we can actually see some IOs going on that volume. So it's not much going on, it's just formatting the drive, but it's writing to those 3 drives. That's it. That was the base setup of Scaleio in the labbuildr environment. I hope you found that useful. If so, just drop an email or follow me on Twitter, HyperVGuy, and happy to get your feedback.